important? It's very important, because this is a party that got 400,000 votes in the last election, and 10 to 12 million online poker players are now all coalescing behind my campaign. So I think it's huge. Bob Barr doesn't know any of them. They don't know him from Adam. Homeschool parents couldn't care less about Bob Barr or Mike Gravel. And most importantly, Bob Barr is the small businessman. So I like Bob Barr and I like his politics, but I don't think he reaches those same groups as I do.
Small correction though, Kubby.
Yes. Kubby is what?
Small businessman.
You can define it how you want. I won't say anything bad about Steve Kubby, but I've been a small business my whole life. He was a magazine editor. I don't call that a small businessman. It's different. Someone said to me today that Bob Barr was a small businessman. I said, really? What does he do? They said he's a lawyer. And I said, well, a lawyer's fine. That's a professional, but it's not a small businessman. Every small businessman I know hates lawyers. A lawyer is not a small businessman. So it's a different thing. Small businessman's a guy who makes his own money and starts his own business, and I'm unaware of what Steve does. What does Steve do now?
Right now he's doing consulting for pot clubs on legal compliance. He's founded Earth Camp 1, which was an environmental camp I was leading in that field way back in the 70s. And he actually did run that magazine. He didn't just edit it. So he did risk his own money on that.
All right. In any case, I'm a small business guy. That's what I do. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've risked millions of dollars. We become a gigantic big welfare state. That's what happened. Guess what happens to America if you allow illegal immigrants to come in and use your hospitals, your schools, your educational system? They all want free lunches, free breakfast, pretty soon, and they all want Social Security. You are the most gigantic big government state in the world. That's what we are. That's why we're going bankrupt. That's why we're going under. So I'm not anti-immigrant. I come from immigrants, but I come from legal immigrants who came here the right way. I come from incredible poverty. My grandfather came from Russia in 1901, and he died in the poor ward of a Brooklyn hospital. Meaning in those days they had wards for people that could pay and people that couldn't pay. And if you couldn't pay, you were in like a giant room with 50 people, and the nurses didn't check on him. When they found him in the morning, he had died of a heart attack overnight, and nobody bothered to check. Okay, so that's what I come from. Russian immigrants and German immigrants. But they came here legally through Ellis Island. They did it the right way. And what I said last night, another interesting aspect, by the way, of what happened last night. Here's the host, and the host says to me after those people called in, he says, so what's your answer about the 15 million illegal immigrants that are in the country right now? Do you have an answer for that? Because I've had 4 presidential candidates on, major presidential candidates, and I've hated all their answers. And I said, well, here's my answer. First, you have to secure the border so we don't get another 15 million and go bankrupt as a nation. First thing, before you do anything else, seal the border. It's not even an immigration issue. It's a terrorism issue. Can you imagine? Our borders are open. Any terrorist can walk in. After you've sealed the border, then you can deal with the 12 to 15 million illegal immigrants that are here. And what I don't want as a libertarian is jackbooting big government Gestapo kicking down their doors, dragging them out in the middle of the night, and bringing them back to their country. Because that's too big government and too harsh for me. I don't want that. I don't want people to be separated, mothers and fathers, from their children. So I happen to be very compassionate about the group that's here. What I want to do, though, is offer a very strict, very expensive pathway to citizenship. That takes 15 years, so you get in line behind all the people who came here legally. Because the most unfair thing in the world that I know of is I have a lot of friends who have legal immigrant wives and husbands and relatives and uncles, and they are so angry that illegal immigrants think they should come in and be first in line ahead of them when they did it the right way. You can't reward people for doing things the wrong way. So what I said was, it would be a very strict, very expensive path. It would take 15 years, but you could get there and you could enjoy the American dream. You must learn proficiency in English. You must learn proficiency in American history. You must never have committed a crime. And last but not least, you must have paycheck stubs proving you've paid taxes. And if you do all that, I welcome you into America. It'll take 15 years. You'll be able to stay here temporarily without any fear of being kicked out, and you will eventually become a United States citizen. And this talk show host on the biggest station in San Diego said, and I quote, "You have just given the best answer of any presidential candidate I have ever heard." Isn't it nice and refreshing to be a libertarian and not be called a kook or a nutcase and actually be told you got good answers? Isn't that something we want as a party? None of the other candidates have ever heard that, because not because their answers are bad, because they've never been on a major talk show. So there is a big difference between what I'm bringing to this party. Now here was the next thing a person asked me on the show after open borders, open borders, open borders. The next thing they asked was, you're not one of those nuts that wants to legalize all drugs, including heroin, are you? See, we've got an image and we've got to overcome that image. It's a problem. Now, I just released my commentary yesterday on drugs. For the first time, I released my issue stand on drugs. And what this said was that I want to, first of all, legalize medical marijuana. Nobody can really argue with that. Very tough to argue with it. If you have a mom or a dad or a child, anything, dying of cancer, multiple sclerosis, whatever it is, it's painful, and the doctor gives you a prescription and says, this will take the pain away? You mean there are people that would stop that person from smoking that marijuana? That's ridiculous. So that's why in almost every state, it's passed. When it's put to a vote, it passes by large margins. It's reasonable. Second of all, I want to decriminalize all marijuana. Third of all, I don't believe in this country if you're guilty of a non-violent drug possession, you should be in prison. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. But we're going to have to go slow because the American public can't stomach all this. You start with medical marijuana, you move to decriminalization of marijuana, and as soon as people find out that the world doesn't end tomorrow and that we don't fall off a square earth, you can move on to other areas that are a little more radical. But I'm a guy who's a mainstream right-center libertarian that wants to bring all our principles along slowly. We all want to dismantle the IRS. We love that tomorrow. Does anyone in this room, I want to show of hands, how many people would like to dismantle the IRS? Show of hands. How many people believe the IRS will be dismantled tomorrow? Exactly. Exactly. That's why I support a flat tax. That's why I support ending the marriage penalty. That's why I support keeping the Bush tax cuts and making them permanent. That's why I support ending the death tax. That's why I support ending the alternative minimum tax. That's why I support, by the way, my own idea that a lot of talk show hosts have said is fabulous. I support a new tax cut that is anyone who's 55 years of age or older, you do not pay capital gains taxes for the rest of your life. Why do I do that? Because every one of us can retire on half the money if you no longer pay taxes on interest from your bank, dividends from your stocks, capital gains, and anything you sell that's an investment. Hey, we've all worked our whole lives. The day you turn 55, why shouldn't you be rewarded as an American with no more taxes on anything that is an investment? So your investment money, you now need half to retire and have a wonderful life. Here's the way I frame taxes. Now, I've never heard anyone else frame it. Taxes, tax cuts, that I believe it, are a family issue. We are the pro-family party, the Libertarian Party. Democrats say, and liberals say, that you're heartless when you want to cut taxes for the rich. And I say it's the exact opposite. People earn money. And every dollar you take away from a hardworking person, every dollar every one of you pays in taxes is another day that you can't retire. It's another day you're not closer to being able to enjoy your golden years, your sunset years. It's another negative that means your kids might have to go to a public college instead of someday going to, maybe they're good enough to get into Harvard, Stanford. It costs $50,000 a year, but you can't afford it because you were taxed too much. You know, when I live in Nevada and I pay 0 state income tax, my life is so much better than when you live in Illinois and you pay gigantic taxes. I live in what some would call a mansion, but I'm not rich. The reason I live in a mansion, I couldn't live in a house that size in New York, in California, or in Illinois. What taxes do is they destroy your lifestyle and erode your life. They're taking money away from people that earn it, and they're giving it to people that want their hands out and don't want to earn it. And that's bad. And I think we can get the votes of millions and millions of people who earn it and who are sick of having the money taken away from them. And the number one group in that category is small business owners. So that's where I stand on all the issues. And the last thing I'll say as I close today is, I get asked again and again on the radio, but Mr. Root, isn't a vote for a libertarian a wasted vote? Because you're not going to win. And I give them a great story that turns it around. I say to them, you know, I'm a son of a butcher. My dad, the butcher, was a very different butcher than most people have ever met. He was a Jewish, conservative butcher from Brownsville, Brooklyn, who answered an ad in the newspaper to found the New York State Conservative Party. Now, for those of you who don't know the New York State Conservative Party, it's the most successful third party in the history of the United States of America. They founded it in the early 60s to try and defeat Jacob Javits and Nelson Rockefeller, who were